The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of Green Acres and our guests. These general gardening tips and suggestions may work for you, as well as those from alternative sources. When using any garden products or tools, read and follow all label directions. And learn how to make your yard summer strong at bewatersmart.info.
The Green Acres Garden Podcast is the podcast dedicated to helping gardeners hone their growing skills while we celebrate our love of plants. So whether you're new to growing or a seasoned gardener, you're sure to learn something new. Join the fun as we have conversations with world-class growers, passionate green thumbs, and professional garden experts from Green Acres Nursery and Supply. Listen every week. We'll answer questions you didn't know you had. That time of the week. It's that time of the year to get growing, friends. This is the Green Acres Garden Podcast, the home for all you green thumbs out there. And this week we are going to cultivate our knowledge and love of gardening. Of course, I'm your host, Kevin Jordan, and I am on a mission to learn all that I can about gardening and growing and share that with as many people as possible. So come along on another garden adventure because we got a doozy for you this week. We are going to bring you on a crash course for beginner gardeners, all the things you need to know about starting your first garden and how to be successful. And I think you'll be surprised at how simple it truly is. But before we start that, let's say hello to my distinguished co-host, Austin Blank.
Hello.
Hello there, sir.
Hello, sir. Thank you for the very gentlemanly introduction there. And welcome back to all of our listeners. This is the best time of the week when we get to talk gardening. And I'm excited for this topic, Kevin. This is fun. A lot of the times we're taking people, along the journey, and they may have already done some things. They've got some seasons behind them a little bit. But let's think about maybe the people who are starting out for the first time and give them that beginner garden guide from a pro like yourself.
I appreciate that.
So let's go ahead and get into it. I'm curious, Kevin, where do you start? How does somebody who's, maybe they're inspired to start a garden and they want to grow some of their own food, and this is going to be the season they start. How do you get going?
So the first thing is actually simple. Just know your zone. We are in zone 9B. That's our climate zone. And it is great because that means we have a very long growing season. Our winters aren't too brutal, but our summers do get a little bit hot.
Oh, yeah.
So please find out wherever you live, you got to find out your growing zone. Once you've got that, you've got to choose your site, your location for your garden. You might be limited on where you can grow depending upon your property, where you live. But if you can, select a site that has at least 6 to 8 hours. You kind of ran into this a little bit with your garden plot, Austin. Where your first spot was pretty shady.
Yeah, in my backyard, it was tough to find so that's what you mean. Find the spot on your property where you can grow that's best.
Absolutely.
And I think I even made you go out there with me, and we're looking at the sun, and we're trying to, I don't know if listeners would find this useful, but there's sun tracker apps you can put on your phone. And there's augmented reality where you can hold the phone and see a line of where the sun goes throughout the day. And that can help you determine where the sunniest spot is. And that's what we're looking for, right?
Technology. It's crazy. Yeah. But especially in your new garden plot at the community garden, you got upgraded.
I did.
Your first spot was pretty shady. It would have been a struggle. Your new spot is in full sun, so Perfect location change. So find a spot that gets at least 6 to 8 hours. If it's getting less than 6, you're probably going to struggle for most of the crops that we're going to talk about today in the plants. So full blasting sun. If it does get a little bit of shade, that late afternoon shade is probably going to be best, especially if you grow tomatoes and peppers and things that don't want to get sun scald. So a little bit of shade at the afternoon can be good, but full blasting sun is best. So at least 6 to 8 hours for sure. Once you have your spot selected, this next step may be the most important thing out of all we're going to talk about today, of how crucial it is. So, right, preparing your soil. Mm-hmm. Soil. It's a thing we bring up each and every week, no matter what we're talking about. The media that you grow your plants in really has a great effect on their health and their livelihood and their life. So preparing your soil. Most of us here where we live have pretty poor soil. If you don't, pat yourself on the back because that is awesome. And even if you had a garden spot that has fairly decent soil, you're probably still going to want to put some effort into amending it. So that's adding compost, organic matter, well-rotted manure. That's really going to help improve the soil structure. Of course, we love earthworm castings around here for breaking up clay, but compost, organic matter, well-rotted manure, all of that is so good. It's going to help break up those really difficult soils. And what's really helpful for us, we have such hot summers that it's nice to have soil that actually is rich with organic matter. It tends to hold a little bit more moisture, so that way on those super hot days when your plants are a little extra thirsty, hopefully there's some moisture left behind in your soil. So amending your soil, building up your soil is going to be crucial and key.
Cool. Okay. So let me ask you this, though, Kevin, because I was just doing a little shopping for soil amendments for my garden plot.
There we go.
And I went to Green Acres, and there's a lot of options, actually.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm wondering what you think. For somebody just starting to amend their soil for the first time, what's the go-to stuff? What do you think?
So sometimes you'll see things labeled as soil conditioner. I love the fur mulch variety that has a certain percentage of chicken manure.
Right.
So that one's really rich. Actually so rich that in the heat you will smell the contents of that bag. But when it pours out, it's like black gold. It's so dark and rich. But yeah, the soil boosters, soil conditioners, soil amendments, different brands you're going to see. I would say do your homework a little bit, shop a little bit. Find things that are going to work for your garden situation. For instance, some people may have to have a location where, hey, I can't garden in the ground. I don't have a location. So I'm going to grow upwards. I'm going to grow in containers or raised beds. And so if you're going to do that, then you're going to need entirely different soil. So you're going to want to use raised bed mix or a really rich potting soil if you're going to grow in containers. And that container growing and raised bed growing is a fantastic way to have success in that first season of growing, especially if you don't have really good, decent, rich, well-drained in-ground soil. So raised growing can be very beneficial.
And that's what's different about those soil mixes is they drain better, right?
They'll be designed for the container growing or the raised bed.
Cool.
But absolutely, there's different products out there, but they should have just tons of organic matter. Well, like I said, look at the ingredient list. You can go to your big box stores, you can go to your local nursery, like Green Acres Nursery and Supply, and you will notice the difference on the ingredient list of the different soils and things that you're going to be purchasing. It matters. You want things that it's like garbage in, garbage out. So you want rich soil. It's gonna take some high quality compost,
Go for the good stuff.
soil conditioner. Yeah. So
and we talk about soil here almost every week, and it seems to be one of your keys to success.
For
Kevin,
sure, absolutely,
is what you have done to amend your soil over years of time. Right. This isn't just a once and done kind of thing.
We add compost and do a top dressing at least twice a year to our school garden. When we first started, it was all fill dirt, chunks of asphalt, and just trash in there essentially, and it was hard as a rock. We would put shovel to it, a nice round point shovel, and I mean you'd strike it with all you could.
Get some
and
sparks.
It sparks, yeah. It seemed like it, and it would just chip away. Now, I mean, you've been out there. It's we add to it each and every season.
Right.
We replenish it.
It's loose.
So prepare your soil. If you want to get in there and dig it up, and you can go get soil test kits if you want to find out kind of what's in there. But ultimately, your soil probably needs a little help. Even if you had, if this isn't your first season, like you said, you've had it for a few seasons behind you, the people who do have a few seasons behind them and are continually having success in the garden, it's probably because they are topping off their garden beds. They are doing top dressings of compost, using, well-rotted manure and all that. Mulching as well, we will get into. And these are all the things that are really going to set you up for success, because everything else we talk about, the plant choice, how to water and whatnot, and that is almost pointless if you don't have really good soil.
Cool. Okay, right on. So you've mentioned you got to understand your climate. You got to pick the right spot with the best sun exposure for what you're trying to do.
Yes, sir.
And then you got to prepare that soil. That sounds like the best way of preparing. And then I'm curious, what are the next steps for you, Kevin? What do you think?
For me, even before you plant, which we'll get to, I'm sure people are champing the bit, because I actually have a great list of some of the best plants to kind of get started with for spring planting right now.
Okay.
We'll get into that. But this is even more important, Austin. So I had a friend I ran into recently, really smart guy, lives up in the mountains here, up in the foothills, and he's like, hey, I planted a veggie garden. I got some tomatoes in there and some squash and whatnot, and it was going. But everything got fried. He's like, man, it was just so hot. It's so hot here. I don't know. He's like, I just don't think I can grow up there. It's just too hot. And I'm thinking,
hot.
Well, we grow down here in the valley, and it's ripping hot. And there are some struggles, but there's things to overcome that, thankfully. But I was like asking him, I was like, well, what are you doing up there? Do you use mulch? He's like, oh yeah, I've got mulch. I'm like, did you mend your soil? Mended my soil. I'm like, okay, check. Is it in full sun? He's like, full sun, of course. It's because they're getting fried.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, well, what's your drip system like? How long are you having it on? What using emitters, microsprays?
Not doing drip.
He's like, oh, no, I'm hand watering.
Oh no.
And I was like, ding, ding, ding. So to me, I'm like thinking, no, it is hot up there and it is blazing, right? And the sun is strong, but you need an irrigation system, my friend, because the hand watering clearly wasn't doing it. Because watering our veggie gardens, especially once they get established, you want nice, deep, infrequent watering to make sure that the water can make its way past all those roots into the root zone and encourage all those strong roots to develop. And then you kind of wait for it to dry out just a little bit and then come back for some more. And that's really hard to replicate with just hand watering. There are some gardeners out there, I'm sure, who are listening. They're like, I do it.
Wrong, like not enough, or
it's probably just not enough. It's probably hard to keep up. And then sometimes what we'll do is if you don't do enough one day, then the plants are in stress, and then we spend the rest of the time just drowning out our plants, suffocating them with too much water, right? Doing the deep waterings perhaps, but maybe not doing the infrequent part,
right?
To let them breathe a little bit in between. So that to me, set up an irrigation system if it's possible. Drip irrigation, I love them. There's little drippers, there's drip tubes. That doesn't mean just one little tiny drop goes to your plants. It should cover the root zone, and you should have it on long enough to truly let that water percolate and just seep down into the soil. You can do micro sprays and shrubblers and bubblers. There's so many different ways to customize a drip system. There's tubes with the drippers built straight into it. It's pretty cool. You can get really creative with how you do it, but really the point is letting water get right to the root system deep enough so that way the plants can fully get a good solid drink, and then give it a little time in between watering. Drip systems, irrigation systems, soaker hoses, to me, those are going to be the best ways to really ensure you're not going to have an issue with watering, because hand watering is kind of cool. You get a lot out of it. It's fun to go out there in the morning. Mm-hmm. I suggest having a hose with a sprinkler head on it. That's
sure.
There's ways, there's benefits to that. But I think there's more difficulty and there's more pitfalls involved. Absolutely. I'm sure some people are listening. They're like, I water by hand. Good for you. You're an exception to the rule, and I mean, good luck to you. But having an irrigation system really pays off, especially when the summer cranks on and life. You get life in, things happen, and maybe you don't have enough time to get out there. And in some cases, you would have to water early morning and afternoon if you're going by hand. And so
but also the moral of the story here is it's not too hot to grow vegetables, right?
No.
It's
no, yes. Moral of the story, it wasn't the heat that was completely igniting your plants.
It's the lack of water.
Yeah, because we're gonna have the heat. We'll get sun scald and we'll have some other issues, but no, we grow. We grow. This is NorCal. This is us. Yeah. We grow plants. And so it's not too hot. There's things like shade cloths and whatnot you could also implement. But I think ultimately watering is such a big issue.
Sure. Okay. All right. So once you've got your irrigation system set up, dialed in, and you've got the ability to water your plants, can we talk what plants,
yes.
Kevin? You mentioned you've got a list. I would love to know your top plants for a beginner.
So I'll just do a kind of a broad, generic list of some of just the heavy hitters.
Okay.
That maybe the top kind of 5-ish plants for maybe your first time growing a whole veggie garden for right now. So we've got, of course, you know what I'm going to say, Austin.
Tomato.
Yeah, of course. So number one, I'd be a goofball. Tomatoes are a classic favorite, especially for Zone 9B. They love this heat, the warmth. We have a long growing season. And so for me, tomatoes are the royalty of the garden. We salute you, tomatoes. So every first garden has got to have tomatoes. Even if you don't enjoy tomatoes, try at least one. I grew up not liking tomatoes at all until I had one from a garden, and I was hooked ever since. And I'm like, give me more. Thank you. And that's actually what got me into wanting to grow veggies, is just having a fresh tomato out of a home garden. So those are the number one. Another one which is a classic staple for home gardening, but I think a lot of people have moved past this one a little bit because it's taboo a little bit. But I've got to say, I think for people who are starting out and just want to have some success, have some produce to share and be proud of, is of course zucchinis and squash. and that whole category of squash plants. They are wonderful. They love the heat. They're a great plant for beginners. Some you can train vertically. Some grow as vines. Some of the zucchinis grow more as a bush. But of course, they need to be harvested pretty regularly.
Right.
Otherwise, it turns into a baseball bat
They
pretty
become
soon.
too big, and then they're not fun to eat.
They're spongy. They're not as flavorful. So you got to harvest
Get them small.
And we'll get into harvest. But yeah, you got to harvest them small. If you're listening and you're like, I'm over zucchinis, I'm past it. I recommend go into like winter squash style.
Okay.
Grow ones that if you don't want to be out in the garden every single day harvesting your zucchinis, you can get a winter squash. They ripen a little longer. They'll stay on the vine a bit more healthfully. And then you can go out there and get them once they're fully mature and bring them inside and store them. There's so many different winter squash varieties to choose from. I mean, of course, butternut and acorn and spaghetti squash have been hits at our school. There's ones that was the trombacino. It's like a trombone.
Oh, I've seen that.
Very long. There's tons of cool ones.
Yeah.
So if the classic, just summer squash and zucchini aren't your thing, try to go with the winter squash too. They're pretty cool, and you can grow them vertically. Those ones are great.
Okay, right on.
Next, another nightshade plant. Of course, this is a must for every garden. It's a huge portion of our school gardens dedicated to these. Peppers.
Yes.
From sweet to hot. I would say bell peppers have got to be the one you've definitely got to start with, because
Right.
everybody can enjoy a nice sweet pepper.
Not everyone can handle the spice of the
Yes,
hot ones, but the bell pepper for sure.
They're
Is there a
rad.
specific kind that you recommend, or just any bell pepper?
California Wonders. I love them all. Now they have a lot of like miniature style bell peppers,
Yeah.
where like little snack-a-bells, and there's tons of different cultivars out there. You can get the candy stripe ones we've had in the past, ones that have variegation on the pepper that are sweet. But sweet peppers, I think, are just a must. And there's so many different varieties you can kind of play with. Ones that ripen to red, of course, your green peppers, your ones that ripen yellow and orange and purple. So you can have fun with the colors. But I think sweet peppers in the garden, there's just so much you can do with them. I love just pulling them off the plant, give them a little rinse or whatever. And with the students, we'll eat them. And I'm telling you, and I love the ones we get from the farmers. Bless them, they're doing a great job. But when you get one from your garden and you bite into a bell pepper and it's fresh, it's so loud. It's like eating Frosted Flakes, where you can't hear yourself. Like someone's talking to you and you're just like, hold on. You're like, I can't hear you. I'm eating a pepper. Like,
crunch.
it's so crunchy. And I had a student kind of bring that up to me recently. And she's like, Mr. Jordan, like, I had one from this. It just wasn't the same. I like the crunchy ones here.
Aww.
And they're just like, and so I'm telling you, a fresh bell pepper, sweet, it just can't be beat. Now, if you're into things a little hotter, we're growing, the serranos, the jalapenos, the habaneros. I even got a couple ghost peppers going this summer.
Nice.
So it's fun to play with the hot things. You can make hot sauce. And
Well, you can even do the no spice jalapeno. Right?
Okay.
So there's even spicy peppers that have been bred to not have spicy qualities anymore, and you get the flavor out of them still, and it's a fun way to go.
Stuffing peppers like the Anaheims, and the New Mex Joey Parker. There's all these cool varieties of peppers out there, and they don't all have to be super hot. You can have a lot of fun stuffing them and just put them in salads. I like, honestly, just eating them like an apple. When they're from the garden, you can eat it. You'll just eat them raw.
Right.
They're so good.
Well, I love that you're doing the really hot stuff too. You said you're even doing ghost pepper.
It's just fun. Shishitos, I think, are another fun one to experiment with. They are mostly kind of sweet, a little bit of heat, and it's like a roulette where every now and then you might win, so to speak,
like 1 in
and then
20.
get a spicy one. But for stir frying and whatnot, but peppers, I think, are a great place to start because you can have a lot of fun with those. And another plant or category, especially for spring planting, lettuce. I love lettuce in the veggie garden and other leafy greens. So today we've been removing kale from the garden and actually putting in some spinach that's going to tolerate the heat a little better. I also have got some lettuce started from seed. Now for us, the lettuce, once things get really, really hot, they're not going to appreciate it so much. So for me, I like having a little window of time now in the spring and then even later in fall and do another round of lettuce because it's so delicious. All the different types of lettuce you can grow and experiment with, leaf lettuce, all the head lettuces, the loose heads. It's pretty fun. I love it. There's different colors and textures. Some are sweet, some are bitter. You can have a lot of fun with it. So lettuce, I think, is a killer one to kind of incorporate into your garden. But of course, just know that once things heat up, they're going to bolt. And it might be time to switch those out for something different. And that might be the next thing I'm going to talk about.
What's next?
Beans. I love them. They love the heat. So right now we've been planting a lot of peas in our garden. We've got them growing. They like this cooler weather. But now as things transition from spring into summer, we'll be moving kind of away from the peas and into the beans. You can do bush beans that don't need a lot of any support. They grow low. There's purples and yellows and traditional green ones. They're all super delicious. I love them. Pole beans, I see these beautiful pictures online of people that are showing off all their climbing beans that have these amazing pods, Austin.
Like
There's
really big.
varieties of beans out there. I mean, 2-3 feet long pods, just huge.
Wild.
It's super cool. So if you're looking for an abundant crop, trellis them. Find a good climbing bean and let them climb. Let them go to the sky and beyond, and you will have these amazing beans. You can pickle them, stir fry them, eat them, fresh. I love them. So beans to me, I think are great. They love that warm weather. They eat it up. They're nitrogen fixing plants, which can be cool too.
I like the crunch on them too.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
And a pickled green bean? Come on, man. That's so good. Now, I know that brings us to kind of 5 main plants, but I got an honorable mention.
You got to squeeze in.
I've got to squeeze it in. And this one is actually should have been in the top 5. But just herbs. Herbs in general.
Sure.
And I'll hit leading the charge for the warm season garden of herbs is basil, of course. I love basil. It's just, to me, basil means summertime gardening. It is the warm season herb of my choice. We grow several different varieties at the school garden, and they're so much fun to just watch grow, obviously, because they grow pretty quickly, but to harvest them, make fresh pesto. Everyone right now is like pesto crazy, with experimenting with all these cool different pesto recipes. And
Like
guess
the
what?
variations?
I'm on board. The California style
Yeah.
and whatnot, the pine nut free. We heard someone talking about, using walnuts, using almonds,
Yeah.
adding a little bit of mint.
Substitute. Get in there. Get
Pretty
crazy
cool.
with it.
So I love basil. It loves the heat, and when it does go to flower, some of them I'll cut back. Other ones I'll just let go to bloom, and then the bees, the pollinators, absolutely,
love the basil
adore it.
flowers.
They adore it. And of course, right now it's cool. Cilantro loves the cooler side, so spring and fall and winter for cilantro. Then you got your hard herbs. I love these, sneaking them in. Your thyme, your rosemary, your oregano. It likes to run a little bit, so some of them can do a little bit better in containers if you don't want them getting a little advantageous, spreading into areas of your garden you don't want them. Sage is a fun one. And another perennial herb that I kind of think is pretty cool, especially for anybody who likes to do like Thai cuisine and Asian style cooking, lemongrass. It's a perennial. It needs a little bit of space, but it's just a wonderful herb. These are the herbs. The perennial ones are great, like the rosemary. You plant once and enjoy forever. So there's something to be said about that. But those, to me, I think are a good starting point. But don't be limited by that. You could swap any of these out. I didn't bring up, things like eggplant. Those are delicious plants to grow as well. There's so much more to consider. So if you have space, go with corn, cucumbers, melons. There's so much to grow in the summertime. It really is dependent on what you really like, what do you want to get out of your garden, and how much space do you have.
Wow. And that's the fun part of it right there, because that's why we're doing this. We're growing these plants to eat and harvest and share our abundance with our families and our friends and our own hungry bellies, and go out there and start snacking. It's just a blast. So thank you so much for that. That is really great starter point for what we should be growing. And I'm wondering if there's any last advice you have for a beginner gardener before we head out, Kevin. What do you got?
Keep it small at first. Start small and aim big. Some people may be very ambitious, and don't let me slow you down from your ambitions. However, I would recommend this. Try to have some goals that are obtainable in your first season. Have a garden plot that is within reason, because you're going to need to harvest all of these things. So another tip would be, whatever plants you do choose to grow, learn as much as you can about them. You brought up how we're growing these plants so we can harvest and eat, enjoy them. And that is a great point, Austin. So after all the things we've said, the watering, the soil, all this, you got to have set aside time to harvest and to maintain. So get a basket, maybe get into your schedule either early morning or late afternoon when you can go out in that garden when it's not too warm, and make a routine of harvesting, checking on your plants. They'll give you opportunity to notice any problems, pests, any issues before they arise, before they get too big. So if you keep a smaller garden this first year, that'll allow you to have some success. And then, of course, the following years, you can always expand and add more.
Well, you brought up a great point. This is one of my favorite things I've learned from you, Kevin, doing this every week. and you call it footsteps in the garden.
Yes.
Right. And that is one of your keys to success, I feel like, is being out there. You're not doing, it's not all hard work. It's really just checking in and seeing, harvesting when needed, taking an, keeping an eye out for maybe pests that might be coming along or whatever's going on. You need to be able to check. Sometimes your irrigation might fall over here or whatever. You got to put things back together, right?
You know it. And then another thing that I would add to that is if you really want your garden to be successful this year, do all the things we mentioned, but also add flowers.
Oh.
Add some flowers. So sunflowers, lavender, the cosmos, nasturtiums, zinnias, calendula, the bee balm, marigolds, echinacea, right? These are all plants, flowering plants that you can incorporate in and around your vegetables. So don't just grow the things you're going to eat. Grow some things that are going to bring in some beauty, but also lure in all these wonderful insects and pollinators to the garden. So don't just grow the edibles. You got to grow something for the insects as well.
I love that. All right, cool. Well, man, this is a lot to chew on, and I hope that somebody who's been inspired to start gardening this year can use these steps to get a good, good start. And,
Absolutely.
And hopefully they're checking off some boxes here as we go. So big thank you, Kevin, for setting this up, and I'll let you take us out.
Well, what a great time. Just sitting back, having fun, having a little family episode, just me and you. I love the topic, though. I think we need to get more people involved in gardening and growing. And anybody, it's never too late to learn. So no matter what your age or your wage, gardening, I think, is for everybody. Mm-hmm. And it's really, I think the path to success for gardening and plants has already been done by people. It's been laid out. We can learn from others. And I think, to me, that would be my last thing, is reach out to other growers, gardeners, make friendships, relationships, and learn from as many different people as possible. That's what I've done, and it's really helped me out quite a bit, and hopefully I'll continue to do that.
Hey, our listeners can do that on our Facebook group, the Green Acres Garden Podcast Facebook group. That is a direct line to you, Kevin, and me, and some other people at Green Acres. If you've got a question, send us a picture, write it out, let us know what's going on, and we would love to help you out. And oftentimes, somebody else might jump in before we do.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Send us those pictures, and maybe send us some pictures of what you're working on. I would love to see your gardens in progress. Absolutely. Well, I love this episode. That was so much fun. I hope people are inspired to garden and grow. I know I am. And so let's get after it. Let's have a great season. We're only just one plant, one seed away from a great harvest. So let's all get after it. Until next week, garden friends, happy gardening to you all. And please, never stop growing.